Evening and welcome to this, the regularly scheduled Shelburne Selectboard meeting of Tuesday, September 10th, 2019, which I call to order. The next item is to approve the agenda, and there is a request to add a second executive session relating to, what are we calling it, Lee?
Related to the zoning appeal at Shelburne Green litigation.
We've just finished describing your amendment.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, I'm
Not a problem.
tardy.
Other than that, is any discussion? Is there a motion?
So moved.
So moved by Mary,
Second.
seconded by Jamie. Those approving, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay. Colleen not voting for reason of not being present. We cannot do the August 6 minutes, but we can do the August 27. Is there a motion to that effect in the next item?
I'll move to approve the August 27th minutes.
Mike moves approval of the August 27 minutes.
Second.
Jamie seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none. Those approving, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Mary not voting for reason of not having attended the meeting. The next item are public comments. We will miss Ruth now, since the new library and town center opens Saturday. But are there any other public comments? Hearing none, seeing no hands, select board comments is the next item. Mike, do you have any?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Mary?
Yes, hi. First, I wanted to apologize for missing the last meeting and being a little tardy myself today. And second, I wanted to point out that, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the Shelburne Tree Committee is having a meeting tomorrow night here at 6 or 6:30? 6:30 to talk about the emerald ash borer. And I recommend that people go. The tree committee has been putting little placards on ash trees in neighborhoods to let people know about the ash borer. It's not a question of whether it's coming. It's just a question of when. And I encourage people, if they have ash trees, to attend the meeting. The tree committee's been very active and vigilant about this, and you'll learn a lot. There is an inoculation, an injection you can do in the tree that has a fair amount of efficacy. The tree guy I talked to said 97%. I read 70%, but so anyway, I encourage people to go to that tomorrow night.
Thanks, Mary. Jamie?
No comments.
I have only one, and that's to note that the formal opening of the library is Saturday. You're all invited to what promises to be a pretty exciting day on many accounts, including free elevator rides. And so please make that event, because it's going to be quite a day, most of the day, and I'm one of great pride for the community. Next item is the town manager report. Lee?
Thank you. And building on that comment about the event on Saturday, which begins at 9:30 across the way, we are still working on the building, as you know, but things are moving right along. It's a lot like a stage production. The last week of rehearsals gets challenging, and then the show goes on wonderfully. So things are moving along. The elevator has been certified. The fire marshal's coming tomorrow, and we're hopeful that everything will be in as good a place as it can be for Saturday. Also wanted to mention progress we're making on the dog park. We met again with a wetlands expert from the state recently, who has become more permissive in what we might be allowed to keep there if we apply for a wetlands permit from the state. We're working with Dory Barton out of Huntington, who's a respected wetlands consultant, She's also chair of their Selectboard, so she understands town-state dynamic and understands the desire to keep the budget as affordable as possible. She's a great person to work with, and we're hopeful that we can work through that state permitting process smoothly and keep as much as is useful for the dog park, keeping it in its present location. And also wondering if it might be okay to have a moment of silence in memory of 9/11,
Yes, thank you.
which is tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. Well done. Any discussion? Hearing none. The next item is to change the name of the Shelburne Tree Advisory Committee at its request, and a meritorious one that was. I think a nanosecond later, nobody could remember why that was ever advisory, but so be it. And as Mary has noted, we appreciated the informational session you conducted with us last meeting, and certainly we second Mary's suggestion for people to take advantage of the further education you offer, particularly private property owners. Is there a motion to the effect?
Move to change the name of the Shelburne Tree Advisory Committee to Shelburne Tree Committee effective as of this evening.
Second?
Second.
Mary, any further discussion? Hearing none. Those approving, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay. The ayes have it.
Can I ask a question about this? Does this mean, I don't know, does the committee have like rules of procedure and things like that that go along with being a CBC? Is that part of, not to belabor the point, not like I don't think we should change the name, but I'm just curious what it actually entails sort of procedurally.
As
Tell us
far,
who you are.
Dave Hall. I'm the vice chair of the tree committee as well as being tree warden. As far as I know, we follow all the normal procedures for being a committee.
Okay.
You have an agenda?
We
You
have an
post the-
agenda,
post
we
the
take
meeting.
minutes, we
And they're warned and.
They're warned, minutes are posted. I had never thought that in my time on it that we really were an advisory group.
Right.
So it just seemed to be time to make
So the
a-
name is following, is catching up with the reality of what the group
Right.
is. Yeah.
You know, in the beginning, perhaps it was more of an advisory group. Gail Henderson King has been on the committee since its inception.
Okay, great, thank you. Thank you.
I'm guessing it was more of a shorter term,
Right.
right, advisory type group that became a much longer term.
We just
Committee.
changed the name, Gail, but Mike had a follow-up question. Mike had a follow-up question about how you conduct your business, and is it aligned with how standing committees do publishing, observing open meeting law, publishing an agenda and such. And David has just finished telling us that indeed that's the case. So it may be you have nothing
Nothing else
that
to
you
do.
have to say,
Nothing more to do.
but feel free.
I was trying to get here before you would get to this item, so
Well, your timing's good.
I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've urged folks to come tomorrow night. Mary made quite a point of saying that you're meeting tomorrow night, and
Yes.
as a source of information about the borer, and so,
Yes, we're meeting at 6:30 here in this room. Providing it's not pouring, we will go out to identify ash trees so people know what they look like. And then we'll come back and have more information about emerald ash borer. But if it's raining, we'll do it all in here.
We'll look out the window to see the ash.
Right, we can wave to the ash trees rather than look at them personally, but that's the plan. So thank you. Is there any other questions I can answer for you on?
Well, I should ask what my colleague always asks. Is everyone on the committee familiar with the ethics rules?
Good question.
ethics ordinance.
Yes, we're very familiar with it, and actually, I think every member on the committee has done the ethics training.
Oh, wow.
So
Bravo.
Excellent.
I think we're all good.
Outstanding.
And thanks for all the signage. It's gotten my neighborhood talking.
Oh, good, good. Well, that's the point, is I think a lot of people don't realize quite the extent of how many ash trees really exist in town. We just started doing Harbor Road right-of-way, and actually neither Todd nor Jan are here, but they were the two out doing the inventory, and they said there's just this mass of all these ash trees on the side of the road. They're like, how do we do this? What do we do? There's just too many.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
have a lot. And so it's going to be
Thanks,
an
Gail.
eye-opener.
Sean? Excuse me. Sean,
I have a question for the chair for the committee. If we
you
have.
want to identify yourself?
Oh, I'm sorry. Sean Moran from Lakeview Co-op. If
802.
we have a community, and I have no idea, I mean, I know I planted ash trees, but now I have no idea what they look like. We have a lot of trees, and I'd love to know if some of them are ash trees. Some of them are very big and, you know, a little iffy. So does the committee ever go out to a community and say, that's an ash tree, that's an ash tree, that's not a very good ash tree? You know, do they go and identify, or do we need to get an arborist?
For trees that are within the road rights-of-way or on public roads, we're doing an inventory right now, so we're identifying those ash trees, and we are determining, are they in good health, are they in decline, or are they dead right now, and making those notes so that we can eventually come and get approval to go and do some tree removal, tree inoculation, whatever needs to be happen. We don't go on to private property at this point, and so part of what we're trying to do is educate people and residents in the community by holding different workshops. So the workshop tomorrow night, for example, is to be able to help you identify ash trees and get some general information. So we're trying to get that information out as much as we can.
You can also contact the county forester, which is, I don't have his contacts with me, but that's Ethan Tapper.
Oh, good point, yes.
You know, there's a state employee that part of his job is to educate the public, and right now, emerald ash borer is a big part of what the public's concerned about, so.
Did you say Ethan Tapper?
Ethan Tapper, yes.
Yeah, he's been to.
Or urban and community forestry, because you're in Lakeview. Urban and community forestry of, what's their parent group in the state? Is it
They're under the
Forest and
Department,
Parks?
they're under Department of Forest and Parks, but if you put in Vermont
Urban and
Urban and Community Forestry Program, you'll get right to their website.
You know, you're like you're a small community within the community. They're also a great resource to be using.
And Sean, they're pretty easy to identify if you just go online too. And you'll be able to figure out which trees are ash in your neighborhood, and then also what degree of health they're in too.
Yeah,
There's
they have a
lot.
pretty distinct leave set up, so hopefully that would help, but I don't,
Come tomorrow
unfortunately, we
night.
didn't bring any information tonight.
And they grow fast. They planted one in California from a bucket, and it went to like a 4-story tree in 7 years.
They do grow fast.
So,
Yeah, we don't quite have the same growing conditions that California does for that,
Ours don't
but,
grow quite that fast. But they were overplanted in Chittenden County.
yeah, in the
and
80s
parts
and the
of other
90s, they
parts of the
were
state.
grossly overplanted.
Right.
School Street.
All
Yeah,
along,
yeah.
School Street. The
Yes.
whole thing is bloody ash trees.
Yeah, drive into the school.
Okay, Sean, all
yes,
set?
thank you very much.
Thanks, gang. Thanks, Gail.
Thank you.
David? Next item is the use and fee policy for town facilities.
Oh, we missed one.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Paquin is patiently waiting, who has applied for a seat on the Natural Resources Conservation Committee. Would you care to?
Hi, my name is Bob Paquin. I've lived in Shelburne since 1988. I worked for about 32 years with Senator Leahy on natural resources and conservation, and then 8 years with USDA with the Farm Service Agency. And I happened to see the vacancy in the Shelburne News and thought it was, now that I'm retired, it might be a good time to try to get involved and see how I could help. I had a great meeting with Gail, and Dawn is going to give me a briefing, and I think they have a meeting tomorrow night, so I could was invited to sit in on that and get to know a little bit more about the committee. So that's my story.
Thank you. Any questions of Bob?
None, thank you very much for volunteering.
Thanks.
Yes, thank you for volunteering.
No, we're honored really by your interest and we're certainly going to benefit from your expertise and experience. So we thank you for applying.
Yeah, and the chair, Gail Albert, who can't be here tonight, but expressed her strong endorsement of Mr. Paquin as an applicant.
I think we have to vote.
We do.
And you will be expected to read the ethics ordinance. Cover to cover.
No quiz. No quiz.
We're working on it.
Thank you.
You didn't have to follow it, you just said you had to read it.
Is there a motion?
Move to appoint Robert Paquin to a seat on the Natural Resources Committee effective this evening and ending April 2021. 2022.
22.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Mike seconds. Jamie's motion to appoint Mr. Paquin. Any discussion? Hearing none. Those approving, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Welcome, and we'll see you
Thank
tomorrow
you.
night. The next item, in fact, is the use policy for town facilities. This has been a continuing effort on our parts to develop and ultimately approve a policy which is now in its final draft. Are there any comments from members? Mike?
Not really. I was actually looking at the included form, and I couldn't remember what we wanted to include that wasn't actually typed. So
So we had added, I'm trying to remember. There were a couple additions, right? There was verbiage in section 4
About
around
the
the
town.
ID, about the voter ID
Are you trying
laws.
to find the old
Yes.
one?
Yeah.
And see what's missing? Because I have the old one, if that's
Yeah,
helpful.
the changes were not
They were pretty
significant.
modest,
yeah, I
yeah.
thought they were fairly modest.
We
so-
added, I think, in the headers for the column, Shelburne resident
Oh, okay.
/ business,
Yeah,
right? There were
just
some
clean that up for
cleanup
consistency.
changes
Added a specific name and a phone
Right.
number, who to call for the various
for Sue, for.
Okay,
building
right.
uses.
They were mostly editorial.
Yeah, there wasn't anything substantive to the changes.
No, just trying to clean it up and blend various parties' questions, needs into a single coherent document.
Okay.
And then we added language around, I thought we added a sentence around ultimate decision-making resting with the town manager, correct?
I thought we did too, but I don't see that.
I think, yes, second paragraph, Nini had helped worked on this quite a lot, so the last
Okay.
line of the second paragraph.
The town
It's kind of
manager
a
will be the
catch-all
final
phrase
word.
there.
There it is.
Yeah, and
Okay,
it
great.
repeats in
see.
several places, including the certificate of insurance.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's a nice, concise, self-explanatory policy that hopefully,
And it aligns
It's very workable.
the library as well as the town
Yes,
fee schedule.
and we've kept them informed every step of the way, and
Yeah.
So I'm prepared to vote on this. I
Same.
don't know if we need more
Before we do
comments.
No.
that, is there discussion? The public, Sean?
Sean Moran, Lakeview Co-op. So just a brief history. I'm the president for now. We incorporated in February of this year. Right away, we got a lot of bumps in the road. We had a tax issue, which we worked out with Ted and with Betty Jean. We had a member who appealed to the Board of Civil Authority to not pay taxes. We've had
2 litigation sessions, so no offense to you and Mary, but I'd like not to see a lawyer again for a while because it's very taxing on our budget. I understand the reason for this. Along with the library coming online and the new town hall, there certainly is going to be a lot of want to go into these rooms, and as well they should be rented. And I see bringing these offices into that same pool of rental for janitorial reasons, for security reasons. What I would ask, and I hope there's some discernment of this, is that some of the smaller co-ops, and we are a nonprofit, by the way, some of the smaller groups that use this that aren't town, we have 12 to 13 meetings a year in here, a board meeting every month plus a general meeting, usually in the Peach Room where we've had anywhere between 15 and 25 in the small conference room because the rooms are taken. Sometimes there's 3 people in this room and 25 people in that room. I would hope there's to be some discernment as to when it would start for us who have to put it in our budget. It would have to go under a vote from the general membership, and that would not be able to be done until the beginning of next year. So I would hope that we would be able to petition the select board to say, could we start paying in January? Could we have a little leeway to do this to get it into the budget? It's not a great amount of money. I know we're only looking, $500 or $600, but to a small co-op which is mandated to put a certain amount away for the mortgage and for liability and for capital investments, it's every penny counts for us. So I would just hope that there would be some consideration for that and not make it an immediate for some of the small groups who've been here. I guess we've used it since the 15th of August of last year when we started incorporating.
Thanks, Sean.
That's it. Thank you very much for listening.
The policy does lodge in the town manager the discretion in situations that could be characterized exactly like yours. So rather than a policy change, it seems to me that this has provided for resolution of your very specific problem. And I'd be content that between you and the town manager, you come to some agreeable arrangement.
Okay, thank you.
That's a personal view.
Seems like the intent that we were aiming for.
You know, we're recognizing there are going to be a number of situations of which this is one. There'll be others of other kinds, and we've very specifically lodged the responsibility with the town manager. So,
Thank you.
is there any other discussion? Hearing none, is there a motion?
I move to approve the Town of Shelburne facilities policies and use fees as presented.
Mike moves.
Second.
Jamie seconds. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those approving, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Thank you. And thank you, Lee, for
Thank you, Lee.
the considerable effort you put into this.
Well, Nini was a great help working with other town staff to help work
Yeah.
this into a
Thank you.
manageable process. So
Thank you.
So this is effective today?
that would be the
Okay.
intent, yeah.
Yeah.
People are clamoring to rent
I assume.
spaces.
So, Mr. Chair, if we have a meeting coming up in the next couple of weeks, then we should make sure to see Lee before that.
Yeah.
We'll work it out.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And again, thanks, Nini. That's a pretty major effort. The next item is to consider a town beaver control protocol. You have a copy in front of you, and I have a couple of comments, one of which immediately is to suggest that I'm not sure we're prepared to adopt this tonight. I've been receiving a great deal of input on it, and there's one egregious problem with it. I admit to great ignorance about much of this, so I'm learning quickly, and In that case, I'll identify one change that has to be made for you while we go around amongst ourselves. I had on the second page, the third sentence down, killing of trapped beaver shall be by the most humane means available. And it's been pointed out to me that killing beaver does not necessarily mean they're trapped. So that it's killing beaver, not killing trapped beaver. And plus there's extensive information and education required to perform a humane killing, and we'll certainly want to include some of that in the protocol. Another obvious change that I'd suggest we make for the final draft is that in the middle, under non-lethal means, in the second paragraph, I identified some resources. The Humane Society and the Beaver Institute, and I neglected to identify Green Mountain Animal Defenders, who are an obvious and ready resource, as well as SKIP. So,
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
yeah. So there are several changes that have been suggested. Some are language that I used, which is not really appropriate in the sense it's not accurate. Some are some new ideas. My sense of this was that the town manager should make the key decisions, and as the responsible party in terms of the failure of non-lethal means, as well as determining an emergency, and that we should, to the point of guidance, be very specific about who's going to make that decision, and therefore recommendations to the board. So you'll see that as a feature. There's no doubt input to that decision, and how much of that should appear in the protocol, how much of that should be at the discretion of the town manager, is another question that probably should be addressed. So
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I don't know if I'm following your first comment on killing of trapped beaver or killing of beaver, but
well,
that may be
you
neither here
could
nor
kill
there.
beaver by shooting them in the
Before they're trapped.
before they're trapped. Yeah.
And in some situations, apparently, that might be called for.
Yeah.
Oh,
So there's a
understood.
question.
So there,
So I should
It
have
might
not,
be
I
more
should
than
have simply
killing
said
trapped.
killing of beaver
okay,
rather than trapped. No.
got it. I mean, I had questions around the trapping shall be conducted by, I didn't know if all of these boxes needed to be checked or if it was just up to the town manager's discretion. I also question, does this board need to approve?
Right, I don't think.
I
think
don't know if I love that necessarily. I
Trapping?
understand the visibility given the recent incident, but I'm just not sure the select board needs to be
I agree with you.
involved with that necessarily. Just my,
I think notice is important. I think there should be notice and an opportunity for the board to understand why. I mean, trapping, the distinction is not so much trapping as it is the failure of non-lethal options. And at what point do we say non-lethal options haven't worked? Is there sort of a second chance for a non-lethal option, or is it overwhelmingly not going to work and hasn't worked, and anybody with two legs can stand there and see it isn't working? I mean, I'm not certain yet of the language, but it would seem to me that this is legitimately and economically a decision of the town manager. Now, the town manager reaches it with whom he or she accesses is up to that person to decide.
Well, but if you read this literally, it's not really left up to the town manager to trap because.
No, we're
it means-
inserting ourselves as a
Right.
permitting authority, except in
Right.
cases of emergency. So we could rethink this entirely and.
This is just your stab.
I don't know
at
if you have to rethink it entirely. I just
Yeah.
question, does the select board need to be
Yeah.
involved with jurisdiction as
Yeah.
this whole? I have no idea how many of these happen either. Is this like a couple times a year or is it?
Weekly.
Right, you may end up having a lot of these cases
No,
to
almost
review and address,
by
and it just
definition,
strikes
an
me as
emergency isn't going to be
Yeah.
convenient to a board meeting, so you've got that.
that too,
that
right?
whole-
I mean, the
Yeah, the
timeliness of
timing
it is
issue, I think,
challenging
is
for a
very-
board that meets twice
Yeah,
a month.
So why don't we,
Well, here's Josh, maybe.
yeah, why don't we, we're talking about the protocol, Josh, and specifically about the authority to engage in trapping. And there's question, as you know, the protocol says the board should approve that decision. There's question about whether the board should intervene or
Or the timing and mechanics of it.
yeah, or that non-trapping should.
Yeah, I mean, you come from a unique place, given that you sat on this board, so we're just
Yeah.
wondering, does it make sense for us to sort of be in the weeds on a decision like that?
It really, you know, to be non-committal, it really depends on the situation. So it's hard to say specifically. My sense of, you know, reading the protocol, I find it hard to believe there's, you know, emergency situations that would really require a quick decision. However, you know, as you say, getting the select board down in the weeds for each of those kinds of things may not be terribly appropriate either. So I think, I mean, there may be a difference between decision-making and accountability in that you assume that decisions can be made as they're needed, but there needs to be a mechanism for review as well. And a real clear understanding what the steps are, whoever the decision maker is, needs to take to get to that decision. And I think if that's well spelled out, and it's defined who's making the decisions on what basis, then it doesn't necessarily need something the select board has to deal with.
Yeah, so the strength of it is in the reference that the
Yes.
decision maker
Yes.
or the information and experience and expertise that the decision maker refers to, rather than a vertical structure of select board.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable, but that should be well defined.
All right,
as
that's
to
a good way to-
As
yeah.
to what, I mean, if we're talking about a policy usually defines what actions need to be taken by whom, under what circumstances.
Okay.
And so I think if those are well defined, I think that probably is a reasonable approach.
So we
And-
should have more comment about, more comment directed to when you determine a non-lethal option hasn't worked.
Yes.
And what your next step is in entertaining lethal options.
I
Okay.
think that seems, yeah.
And that takes the board out of it, so.
But I think there should be a mechanism for review.
Well, I mentioned just before you came in that there should be board notice.
Yeah,
Yeah,
some sort of
that
reporting
makes
Yeah,
sense.
notification.
requirement.
And then I think we're all agreed that emergencies not only are not so predictable, but not so frequent, that they're going to align with board meetings, and we
Right.
wouldn't want to put ourselves in a position of having to have a meeting. So, Lee, you had a comment?
No, I think it's all helpful approach as this evolves.
Just for the record, Colleen Parker has joined. Yeah.
Oh, good evening,
Hello.
Colleen. Hey, happy to have you. Hey.
Can I ask a question? There seems to be, if I can, I'm sorry, two things going on that maybe I'm not really following, that may be the same thing or may be conflicting, because the town manager can take non-lethal measures, and he does so by doing three different things: following agency natural resources, seeking Department of Fish Wildlife advice, and then exercising the lethal option only when non-lethal has been exhausted. And then you talk a little bit about the non-lethal means of control, and maybe I'm missing something. We then go to lethal option trapping. So is trapping always lethal? You don't ever trap a beaver and then take it to, like, Heinsberg, do you?
The interesting thing.
I'm not sure you're allowed to do
The
that.
answer to your question is de facto no, but in practice, yes.
Okay,
And the interesting twist here is the state permits the transport of trapped beaver as a legal requirement. It is not issuing permits, however, because the state believes there is inadequate available
places to put them.
places to put them. So if you trap,
Your options are 0.
exactly.
Okay, got
So
it,
it's-
thank you.
Yeah, now, at some point, that might change. You raise a good point, at which case you'd want to revisit this,
Okay.
because at some point, the state might permit transport, and then you really have opened a whole another set of
Options
of
available.
non-lethal.
Yeah, okay.
So
So
that's why we
trapping-
said in accordance with state law, which itself may change, and you wouldn't have to keep coming back to the protocol. So, but at the moment, trapping is, you know,
How is the beaver deceiver working right now on Webster Road?
So far, it appears to be allowing water flow. I'm not aware the dam has
No.
been reconstructed. We'll see what happens over time, but so far, so
we're
good.
not sure it's been repopulated yet.
Correct.
Any beaver listening, you know?
Give it a shot.
So
you.
that's a good
A lot of
Question-
work. Do you
yeah.
now know more about beavers than you've ever
Then,
wanted to know? It's been,
So where do we take this at this point? Do we-
Well, I think the next step is, with all of the comments, is to revise here in a couple of places.
Okay.
I mentioned that I didn't anticipate we would adopt and come back next meeting.
Does it make sense for, if you're revising this, to maybe run it by Josh if he's willing, and Jim?
Yeah, I
Why,
think
maybe,
we
if they'd be
we
willing to
run the
just
same
get eyes
course
on
we
it
did
and-
with Lisa and Josh and Jim, and there's Mike's been, the resource committee itself has taken a look, so we have a whole body of experts and experienced people at this point that I'd be personally happy to turn it over kind of to and say,
Yeah.
here's the revision we're anticipating, what are your thoughts, please get them to Lee, and we present it at the next meeting.
I think it's
Yep.
85% of the way there,
Yeah.
right? It doesn't, we don't need to over-engineer this thing.
Yeah.
I
So,
don't think so. Jerry, I thought Jerry did a great job
Yeah.
laying this out.
I
And
yeah, a lot of work.
Okay?
if you've got some scribbles and thoughts,
I
I'd be
do.
glad to take
Yeah,
them along.
Happy to
Oh,
share them,
thank
some
thank you, Lee.
typos
Thank you,
and-
Josh. The next item is updated town road and bridge standards, which is a matter for adoption. Lee?
Thank you. So on an infrequent basis, the state adopts what they call new road and bridge standards. And it's not a legal requirement that towns adopt these, but it's sort of a de facto requirement, because if we want to remain eligible for maximum reimbursement from FEMA and the state in case of damage after major disasters like the windstorm last May, then we do need to adopt these. I've spoken with Paul Gurwicz, our highway foreman, and he says, in general, we do these things anyway, so it's not really changing what we do or adding expensive requirements. There are 7 items in total. Items 1 through 4 and 7 are the mandatory ones. 5 and 6 are optional. My suggestion is we don't adopt those 2. If we do them anyway, all the better, but maybe not bind ourselves to things we don't have to. And if the board's inclined, I'll pass this around for all your signatures if we do
But we
approve it.
circle yes on 1 through 4 and 7.
Correct. That would be my recommendation. 2 of them are actually required through a whole separate set of state permitting requirements that intersect somewhat imperfectly. So it's an intriguing system, but again, Paul feels like it's not really changing what we do anyway out there.
And this essentially sets standards that we have to abide by
Correct.
To get the benefits of.
to get the benefits of funding.
So,
Well, I would think that the coming municipal, the environmental permitting of hydrologically oriented, remember, Josh, that odd phrase of the state.
Hydrologically connected
Yeah,
road segments.
hydrologically connected. I would think this would be something required in anticipation of those financial resources too, wouldn't it?
That's correct. The
Yeah.
first two are required by those other sets of
Yeah.
standards and funding sources.
Okay,
Is this an action item?
Is this?
yes.
Yeah,
Does,
so-
Yes, please.
does that reflect the items 5 and 6 being?
It will
Off the
reflect
table?
items
Okay.
5 and 6. We'll check no on
Okay.
those.
Well, then I would move
Any-
to approve the town road and bridge standard. Is it an ordinance?
No, that would be it, the town road and bridge
Standards.
standards.
Standards, as recommended by the town manager, specifically by checking yes on items 1 through 4 and 7, and no on items 5 and 6.
Mary moves,
Second?
Jamie seconds. Any discussion? Any further discussion? Hearing none. Those approving, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Colleen? Colleen votes aye. Thank you, Colleen.
So if you could please.
The next item is the policy on collection of delinquent taxes, which we are reviewing with an idea to approve.
So this latest draft is based on our discussion at our last meeting, an attempt again to create a clear and prescriptive yet somewhat flexible approach so that we do have a policy and there's clarity for all landowners and taxpayers on how we approach these things. So this is a bit streamlined from the last version. We took out a whole section that allowed a landowner to say, I'd like to just have part of my property go to tax sale, because that would require subdivision approval, perhaps Act 250 approval. It puts us in an impossible position, and if a landowner is at that point where we're going to tax sale, then we just need to take action, and if they want to subdivide it on their own terms, but I don't think it's appropriate to bind us into that complexity.
Unless I missed it before, I really liked the addition of the notice to the taxpayer to apply for abatement. I appreciate that.
Yeah, that was
That-
an idea Mary had. I thought a really good one,
Yeah.
and I'm pleased. And I do have some comments. And I'm pleased we've worked out the 3 payments and adopted an anniversary date, which to me makes sense. The way this reads, a delinquent payer has 3 years from the final installment due date, the anniversary date, April 15th, to pay. I think there should be a lien. We, in my view, as a select board, have a kind of fiduciary responsibility for the town financial situation.
Sure.
And I think failing to secure liability such as delinquent tax at the minimum 1 year out is irresponsible. Now, I think a lien ought to be imposed at least at the 1 year anniversary date. Not necessarily at the anniversary date if everyone, unless everyone feels it should be immediate, in a sense immediate, but certainly by 1 year, plus 1 year. That gives the taxpayer plus 2 years with a lien. The other thing I'm concerned about is, does everybody get 3 years to pay? Well, in other words, it's a consistent policy to allow a payment plan for up to 3 years. And is that really, is there no discretion in your mind? Do you see any discretion such that some payment plans should be less than 3 years?
Well, in a perfect world, I think there shouldn't be more than 1 year, but that's not a reality for someone who's already in a financial bind of some sort. So, again, it's an open question of what makes the most sense for us all. And there's no bright line, crystal, single answer to this. You know, the League of Cities and Towns proposed time frame was much, much tighter.
Oh, it's
than-
harsh. Yeah, it was
and
harsh.
probably impossible for anyone who's already in trouble
Yes,
to.
Would interest still be accruing though anyway?
Yes.
So-
So there's still a penalty in
Penalties and
place.
fees and interest continue to accrue throughout until paid in full. And that's stated a
But
couple times.
without a lien, if we have a lien, I'm much more comfortable, because then the liability is secured.
Can I also ask,
Yeah.
I think a lien arises by operation of law. It's like I could be wrong and we should consult with counsel, but, oh, you have? And they
Yes.
say no?
No, you're absolutely correct. A tax lien under state law is an automatic lien on the property. The difference is that doesn't get recorded anywhere. And I think what the chair is suggesting is the physical recording of a lien. So someone's refinancing and there's a title search, that shows up.
It would
Whereas if they
show
don't
up.
inquire about taxes, there's no document otherwise. There's nothing in the
Really?
land records because it's an automatic lien.
So for us legally challenged, could you explain that a little bit more carefully? So you're saying that if they are delinquent on their taxes, there is an from a legal perspective, a lien sort of kicks in?
Yeah, there's a cloud on title.
Correct.
So that if I sold my property to you and you didn't check, you'd inherit the taxes due. You wouldn't want to buy in that circumstance. You would say to me,
So what does
pay
the
up.
recommendation of the chair actually accomplish? It makes it more sort of official?
I think it would place a document in the land records. So if someone's doing a title search, that will show up immediately.
It has the
One,
force of security.
separate from whether they ask about taxes in
But
the
if
finance
Mary's
office.
correct, we have that security anyway.
We
No,
do
because
accept,
the property could transfer without payment.
But
So-
they
But
still
it
do-
would
but the
still be
lien-
due.
but the lien transfers.
right. But if you were buying a
So we
property,
say, welcome
say,
to Shelburne.
Yeah,
Yeah.
here's your bill.
You owe
Yeah.
us some money.
I mean, say you were buying a property for cash.
It's in the mail,
And-
yeah.
You know, you figured somebody's selling it, I have the cash to buy it, I don't need to do all those other formalities and spend money. You
Right.
might not know you just bought a major tax
That
liability.
actually makes me more comfortable with the idea of officially placing the lien, knowing
Right.
that in fact, we're just marking what is legally already there. We're
Yeah.
actually
Right.
officially
Yeah.
noting.
No, I think Mary makes a great point.
There's not much downside to
No,
adding
No.
it. I
recording
mean,
a
there's
lien.
Yeah.
probably some expense, maybe, on the legal side if you have to, you'll have a form.
Well,
Right. I
by
mean,
setting
you're
it
gonna
up on
need the-
anniversary date, we've really simplified.
We have to make
You know.
sure we do it right, though. That's the thing that worries me a little bit, because I don't know how to do it right, and I'm not,
Yeah.
we'd have to make sure that it's a properly recorded lien, or even if there's a statutory process for it, there must be.
That's the case as well with the tax sale.
Yeah.
There has to be, you know,
I have to imagine
Yeah.
that council could construct a boilerplate form that we would fill out. I
Yeah.
mean, contractors,
After a
hopefully
year,
not
yeah.
often, but file mechanics liens. It's simply
the
a
time.
statement that I did this work and I wasn't paid and somebody owes me money, and they hope someday it catches up with them.
Right.
So is it this to be then at the 1 year mark?
I would suggest at anniversary plus 1 year. So the taxes are owed anniversary 2050, and at 2051, you'd apply the lien. So a delinquent payer has a year before the property goes under lien, and then 2 years under lien for the expiration of the payment period.
The year before it goes under recorded lien.
Recorded
The minute
lien,
you
sorry.
stop, you're in arrears on your taxes, there is a
Sorry, yeah,
legal
Technically
lien.
a
under
Yeah.
recorded lien,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm fine with that.
Now, the other question I've got is, this is the idea of further actions to collect as allowed by law, which may include conducting a tax sale, is pretty discretionary. Why would we not have language that says we're going to conduct a tax sale unless circumstances differently argue, which reverses the order you've got it in
That certainly would make it clearer.
and strengthens our resolve to have a tax sale. So it's not not mistakable, that the end result here is a tax sale unless there's some major mitigating circumstance that the tax collector offers. The way it reads, the tax collector is going to deal with mitigating circumstances and then may conduct a tax sale, and I don't think that's strong enough, Lee.
That's an easy change and certainly makes it, as you've suggested, a clearer and more prescriptive process.
Because we're also relying on God bless, not anyone could replace you, but
Well, someone will, but thank you.
18 years from now, you may decide to cash it in. So the policy's probably still going to be around.
Indeed.
And we want to be sure there's some consistency in how it's being exercised, yeah.
So rather than may, it would be will
We
conduct a
just
tax?
say
it kind
that
of flips
shall-
that sentence.
Taxes shall conduct a tax sale of the property,
Yeah.
right?
Unless there are certain mitigating circumstances, and
may-
perhaps we
and may
describe
take-
those.
And may take other actions to collect as, just reverse the
As-
sentence,
Or may take other actions to collect as
as,
may be warranted.
you know,
Yeah.
as
As the
mitigating
circumstance.
circumstances, you know,
Sure.
demand, so.
No, I think that does strengthen it.
Mr. Chair, I'd love to hear, hate to put him on the spot, but I'd love to hear Peter's view of this policy, what your thoughts are, as someone who's in the office that receives those checks.
I think it's very useful to have the policy in place. It gives staff something to show the property owner and say, this is what's going to happen, this is our policy. It takes us out of arguing, so I like that. I had a couple of just minor points. We talk about 3 years from the final installment due date, currently April 15. Our third installment's due March 15. So that probably should be changed, or consider going to the end of the tax year maybe, because our tax year ends on June 30th, and theoretically, the owner has until the end of the tax year to pay, at which point.
I would say that makes sense.
So,
Here's what I did, Peter. I put 30 days on top of March 15th
okay.
to
then the-
establish an anniversary date. In other words, 30 days from the last installment is the 1 year.
Okay,
What we're dealing with, as I'm sure everybody recognizes, we have 3 installment payments. So it's not like you have one calendar. We're trying to, so the figuring was we add 30 days to the third installment. It's really not a final, and call that an anniversary date, which would be April 15. And that then becomes the basis on which the remaining calendar is for the remaining calendar.
But Peter's saying that the tax year, if I understand correctly, ends on June 30.
that's my impression, that we set a tax rate for the fiscal year, which is July to June. I'm not a
But you're
legal
still
expert
late
on
if
that.
you pay after March 15th, as I've learned once.
Yeah.
Right,
I don't think we should confuse the fiscal year and
okay.
tax
And the
payment.
payment date.
Yeah.
It just was, the language there, it made it sound like the last installment was due April 15. I guess that was my only comment.
Well, yeah, we can clean that up and make that clearer.
Yeah, that's 30 days from the March 15th. The idea was to try not to have separate schedules for each installment. Like you have a August installment, and then you have a 30-day notice, and you have a this and that, and then you have another one, so you repeat paperwork is just unmanageable.
I'm just suggesting the language be clear that
Yeah, I think
yeah.
15 is 30 days
I agree
from
with you.
Yep.
final
Yeah,
due date,
maybe
that's
just
all.
say,
Yeah.
like,
I'm fine with the
I
date.
agree.
That's
So the
all it
idea
is.
was we stick with an anniversary date, and that's the basis for the rest of,
That's fine. Yeah. And just some minor comment, I don't know if we should identify the town manager as the tax collector if someone's given this and they know that that's the person they would
Oh,
need
good
to
point.
talk to
Good idea.
about
Good
it.
idea.
Good point,
So-
Peter.
But other than that, I think it'll give staff clarity, and I think that's good.
You're okay with being identified as?
Comes with the
The
territory.
tax collector. Why, in the, what is it, 5th paragraph, why do we give the option to apply partial payments first to principal?
It's a good question for
Right.
Peter.
If the account's delinquent, and we apply the payment to principal first, that will reduce the next calculation of interest charges. So if an account is past due, in my mind, it's fair to have the owner say, well, can we apply that to the principal first, which would then reduce the next interest calculation. So if you're paying down the principal.
Yeah, no, I understand so we're giving
We're being
the owner,
nicer.
they're giving the owner the option. So if they're not aware of it and just don't know enough to ask, we'll apply it to interest, right?
That's the default right now,
Okay.
yes.
Any other comments?
No, I think this is all good discussion.
Again, we'll revise accordingly.
I have to say, I am happy with the progress and where we've ended up with this. I feel pretty solid about it. I think it achieves a goal that we set out to achieve.
Yes.
In short order, too.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yep.
Yeah, come.
A lot
Given our
more
policy
quickly
develop-
than the ethics.
Our policy development
Yes.
record is, yeah.
Goodness.
Yeah.
And the good news is you're making progress without a policy.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, meanwhile, no, that's great.
Yep.
Okay, Colleen, any comment?
No, I kind of agree with a lot of what was said already. It's hard to talk on the speakerphone, but I agree with what is discussed.
Thanks. Any discussion? Public, anyone? Any comment? Hearing none. Before we go on to the next item, Lisa and Sharon, we're done. We'll see you tomorrow night, so we'll understand if you decide to leave. No. Yeah.
We missed it.
Yeah. Josh was here too, by the way, and just to give you a very quick thing, we're going to revise with a number of the points that you made, and it'll be back at the next meeting for final draft and possible adoption.
Wonderful. Thank
Yeah.
you for taking the time to fill
Thank
in.
you. Thank you both.
Right.
The next item is to authorize voting delegates for the Vermont League of Cities and Towns PACIF Town Fair, which is going to take place in Killington, October 2 and 3.
And so they have an annual meeting, like many organizations, voting on various aspects of governance and policy. And under their rules, town needs to vote as to who would be their delegate to represent the town if someone's going to be there. Sometimes the chair is there, sometimes the manager is there. We're not quite certain which of us might be there yet. Suggestion is to authorize the chair and perhaps me as a backup alternate.
You know, the deputized league, my attendance is questionable at this point, so it's a business meeting of the board, and they will vote on proposals, as well as there'll be motions made from the floor, and each constituent town has to have a formally delegated representative. So I'm sure we could do it tonight just as a question of deputy in Lee's case. And,
So why don't are you open to a motion?
yeah,
Move to authorize Jerry Story as the town's voting delegate for purposes of the VLCT 2019 annual business meeting, and Lee Crone as his alternate.
Second?
seconded by Mary, moved by Jamie. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, those approving, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And thanks, Colleen, and those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The next item is to announce plans for the economic development discussion on September 24, our next meeting, and to that we turn to Jamie.
Yes, so we're making really good progress on this. It's going to be a great evening, pretty exciting. I don't want to give away anything yet, but the panel is very impressive. We have a great group from state government, regional economic development, leadership, municipal manager, and a number of local business owners as well. So it's going to be a pretty impressive roundtable that we will have moderated as well, just to keep the discussion organized and on time. again, the focus of this will be business retention in Shelburne, which is our primary focus. We'll anchor everything in the economic development section of the town plan, which we recently adopted. And we'll have some Q&A. We'll hopefully have a good showing from the community and allow enough time for public comments and questions, and hopefully leave that evening with some additional direction as far as informing future economic development efforts for the town. So it's going to be a good couple hours, and pretty excited about the response so far to the panel.
And we have a brand-new venue.
Exactly. So it's going to be at the Pearson Community Room next door, which will be great to kick off that space.
Yeah.
We'll have a couple announcements coming up in the Shelburne News as well. So, Mike, I don't know if you want to share any additional commentary.
Jamie
Mike's
has been hitting this on all cylinders. He's been taking the lead, and he's doing fantastic work.
hitting up my network too.
He's hitting up his network, and I'm just kind of being his deputy. So I'm trying to offer a hand where I can. So I joke with people, as a philosophy professor, economic development isn't exactly up my alley. So I'm trying to learn and trying to pay attention, but really we could use everybody kind of getting the word out. I think the more people we get
Absolutely.
involved,
Yeah,
the
we'll
better
do
this will
some-
be. And we are going to have a really excellent lineup. I think it's going to be really great. I'm looking forward to it.
Super.
And this
Great.
takes the place of our normal
This will
meeting.
take the
so
place of
from
our
7
regular
until 10
September
or so.
24th
In its
meeting,
all the
in
way,
its
right?
entirety,
Okay.
full agenda.
Full agenda. Okay. Great.
Exciting.
And
It's
it'll be
a-
nice to celebrate the new space as
Yes.
well.
Yeah, that'll
Absolutely.
be fun. Yeah.
Okay. Any questions? Hearing none.
No, we do have a question.
Well-
Jerry.
Oh, good.
I just wondered if Channel 7, will it be covered just like this?
I have talked to Eric at VCAM, who says that it can be live streamed and broadcast and taped from over there. I hope Ken is in line with that as well, but that's what I've been told from VCAM.
That's great. That's really good to know.
Because I've
Yeah.
been telling people.
Yes.
That was a first thing I checked on before making sure we could use the room.
Great.
Yeah, Lee's really done some nice work there. That's going to be great. I mean, okay, any other discussion?
Thank you, Jamie.
Hearing none. The next item is an open space agreement. Lee, do you want to?
Sure. This actually was a two-lot subdivision going back to 2014 by the Gurwicz family, roughly at the intersection of Shelburne-Heinsberg Road and Dorset Street. On that end of town, it covers 6+ acres of land that was apparently agreed to in the Development Review Board process and by the family. The open space agreement appears to be in a typical standard format as we have seen before, effectively giving the town a greater ability to enforce those restrictions on that part of the property.
Does this reflect where it is, where the 6 acres
Basically,
is?
this whole strip.
It's this.
Where's
Okay,
Pond Road here?
this way.
Oh, okay.
Wait, this way. So this is
Okay.
Dorset. So this entire, oh, I see, conservation
Yeah, it's
easement,
this
6.36. Yeah,
Long stretch.
yeah. So why don't we share this with our colleagues?
And
I
if-
know this because Bob leads the rocketry club.
Yes.
And my daughter has participated in years, so this is the
My
rocket
son has
launching.
as well.
I'd like to officially call this the rocket launch open space.
Well, I think they've done it recently at the ball fields.
They do it at
Across
the
the
ball,
way on-
and they sometimes do it at the polo field.
Yeah. So,
I used to do that as a kid myself.
great.
Yeah, it's great. It's a fantastic resource.
So this is essentially cleaning up an old issue that never quite got closed, and typically, if the board were inclined, a motion to authorize the town manager to sign off on that for the town would be the way to go.
If, with everybody's blessing, I will move to authorize the town manager to approve the Gurwicz property open space. I don't know if that's the right form of the motion.
Moved by Mike,
Second?
seconded by Mary. Any other discussion? Hearing none. Colleen, any question? You can't.
No. No.
Those approving, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay. Colleen?
We lost.
We may
She
have-
said aye.
Oh, she just said aye.
Yeah.
Thanks, Colleen. The next item is our 2 executive sessions, as we know. The first of which regards contractual real estate purchase or lease options related to the Fire Rescue Healthy Living Project. Are there motions to the effect?
Or you want me to run through these?
If you would, please.
Okay. I move pursuant to 1 VSA 313 to find that premature general public knowledge of the town's strategy and contract negotiations would clearly place the town at a substantial disadvantage.
I'll second that.
Moved by Jamie, seconded by Mike. Any discussion? Hearing none. Those approving, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Colleen? Aye. And those disapproving, nay. The ayes have it.
I move pursuant to 1 VSA 313 to enter executive session to consider the town's position and strategy in contract negotiations regarding purchase or lease options related to the Fire Rescue Healthy Living Project.
Moved by Jamie,
I'll second that.
seconded by Mike. Any discussion? Hearing none. Those approving, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those, thanks, Colleen, and the ayes have it. The second executive session,
I can do
You
it.
ready? Go ahead, shoot.
we will do in sequence. So we will not be back before, after the
okay.
first one. And as regards the second one, I have to disclose a potential conflict of interest based on appearance. I live in the neighborhood from which this appellant, in which this appellant also lives. This action that in her name, her son is taking is not an action by the association to which I belong. It's an action by a neighbor. I don't feel that it compromises my objectivity or sense of fairness in dealing with the issue at this point. And in that case, feel that I should not have to recuse.
Okay, with that in mind, I would move pursuant to 1 VSA Section 313 to find that premature general public knowledge of the town strategy in connection with litigation involving the Village Green would place the town at a substantial disadvantage, so that we should go into executive session.
Second.
Moved by Mary, seconded by Jamie. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those approving, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Colleen, including Colleen, and those disapproving nay. The ayes have it. We will return.
One more.
Whoops.
One more.
To enter.
I move to enter into executive session to
sorry.
evaluate the town's possible position pursuant to 1 VSA Section 313, the town's possible position and strategy regarding the appeal of the Village Green matter.
And I
Second.
presume invite,
Moved by Mary,
And
seconded,
invite
the
and invite the
manager.
town manager.
Yeah.
forgot that.
seconded by
Me.
Jamie. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those approving, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Colleen? Aye. Colleen's abstaining. And those disapproving signify by saying nay. The ayes have it. Again, Colleen abstaining. Thank you.
I'm not sure if we're.
Yeah, I really
Yes.
wouldn't think so, because we're uncertain about the timing.
Executive session.
Okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so.
I don't think so. We'll just
I
adjourn.
think we'd say,
Yeah.
yeah,
Good evening.
good evening, yeah. I was gonna say good night, but good evening is still early.
So long,
right?
farewell. Auf Wiedersehen.